We believe icons are immortal. We assume Venice stands forever, that reefs will shimmer for our great-grandchildren, and Kilimanjaro's peaks will stay frozen for eternity. Science dictates a colder truth. Our planet's greatest wonders are living on borrowed time. Not in a millennium, not in 5 centuries, within your own lifetime. 5 locations, 5 countdowns. Each has already begun. First, Venice, a city drowning. No metaphor, no hyperbole. A measurable, documented descent happening every single hour. Venice sinks. The lagoon rises. They meet at the edge of a catastrophe that has already started. 5th century builders drove thousands of 6-meter oak and alder piles into the Adriatic mud, packed tight into the clay. Beneath the oxygen-free silt, that wood never rotted. It mineralized into stone. Every palace, church, and bridge rests upon these fossilized trunks. A masterpiece of ancient engineering. But it only works if the water is stable. It is not. Venice is caught in a vice. First, the Adriatic plate slides beneath Africa, dragging northern Italy down 1 or 2 millimeters annually. Negligible. Until a century adds 20 centimeters. Second, and far deadlier, the rising tide of a warming world. Experts are sounding the alarm. Oceans rose 20 centimeters last century. By 2100, they could surge a full meter. For Venice, barely a meter above sea level, a 50-centimeter rise is a death warrant. Acqua alta now floods the streets regularly. High water, high stakes. November 2019. Water surged 187 centimeters above normal. A 50-year record shattered. St. Mark's Square sat under a meter of brine. Its basilica flooded for only the 6th time in 1,200 years. 4 of those floods happened in the last 2 decades. The curve is exponential. Italy spent 6 billion euros on Mose. 78 massive gates guarding the lagoon's mouth. When the tide screams, the barriers rise. Finished in 2020, after 20 years of scandal and delays, Mose works. For now, it holds against 30 centimeters. But predictions suggest 50 by the century's end. Then, Mose becomes a cage. The gates will rise so often the lagoon turns into a stagnant tomb. The ecosystem will die. The stench of decay will make the city unlivable. Venice becomes a trap, drowning or suffocating. The demographics are even darker. 175,000 residents in 1951. Now, under 50,000. The young flee. Living in a salt-cracked city with astronomical repair costs is an impossible dream. Venice is a museum without life. Crowded by day, a hollow ghost town by night. By 2050, no one will call it home. A beautiful, dead stage scent. Then there is the silent killer, salt. Brine seeps into every brick. Water evaporates. Salt crystals grow. They explode within the walls. Salt erosion. Palaces are turning into crumbling sponges, rotting from the ground up. Frescoes peel. Mosaics shatter. Marble cracks. The damage outpaces the cure. St. Mark's, a 1,000-year-old jewel, sheds gold with every flood. Masterpieces are scrubbed by hand, by restorers standing knee-deep in the rising ocean. 30 million tourists crush 50,000 locals. Giant cruise ships used to churn the very foundations. Their wake eats the ancient wood. The city is sinking under the sheer weight of its own fame. Second, the Great Barrier Reef, the largest living structure on Earth. 2,300 kilometers of life, dying. Corals aren't stones. They are colonies of polyps in a dance with algae. These tiny partners provide 90% of the coral's fuel, a perfect million-year alliance. But it has a fatal flaw. the thermostat. A single degree of heat for a few weeks triggers a purge. The polyps evict their partners. Without them, color vanishes. The white limestone skeleton remains visible. Bleaching. The coral isn't dead yet. It is starving. Will the tide turn in time? Algae might return to save the coral. Otherwise, it becomes a graveyard in weeks. 5 mass casualties in 9 years. 2016, 17, 20, 22, and 24. This is not normal. Before the 1990s, these ghost events happened once a generation. Now they are constant. The 2016 carnage was the worst on record. 30% gone. By 2024, aerial eyes revealed a horror. 3/4 of the reef is turning white. A record. Corals can heal, but they need time. The one thing they lack. Recovery takes 15 years. When the heat hits every 2 summers, the math simply fails. The reef is trapped. Each wave kills the survivors of the last. This is not a cycle. It is a death spiral. Experts fear the worst trajectory. By 2050, 90% of the Great Barrier Reef could be gone. It won't be a void. The skeletal remains will stay. But the pulse of the ocean, the habitat for thousands, will stop. Shellfish and wonders of evolution will vanish. Then comes the second silent killer. Ocean acid. The sea drinks our carbon. 1/4 of all human emissions end up in the deep. Carbon dioxide turns to acid, dropping pH levels. Since the industrial age, acidity has spiked 30%. It's a catastrophe. Acidic water dissolves coral skeletons faster than they can grow. They literally melt like chalk in vinegar. Even if temperatures stabilize, the acid continues its slow, inevitable erasure. But there is a third predator, the crown of thorns. A multi-armed monster that eats living polyps. In balance, it is fine. Out of balance, it is a nightmare. Nature used to keep its hunger in check. Now, agricultural runoff from the coast has changed the game. Fertilizer creates algae blooms, a feast for starfish larvae. Their population explodes, multiplying by the thousands. Plagues of these stars strip entire reefs bare. Thousands of plate-sized predators moving in a silent, hungry carpet. They devour life in a single night. Heat above, acid within, monsters below. The reef is under siege. Next, the roof of Africa. Kilimanjaro. 5,895 meters of stone and mystery. Snow at the equator. A paradox that has haunted explorers since the mid-1800s. Hemingway immortalized these eternal snows. That white crown against the burning savanna is one of Earth's most iconic sights. But the icon is dying. Kilimanjaro's glaciers are vanishing at a terrifying, unnatural speed. In 1912, 12 square kilometers of ice remained. Today, less than 1. A 90% collapse in a century. What's left are brittle shards. Ice plates shattering in real time. Scientists in Ohio see the end coming. They've tracked the retreat since the 1990s. By 2030 or 2035, the ice will be a memory. Children born today may only know the snow from old photographs. The cause is a lethal combination of factors. Heat is one culprit, but the real killer is dryness. Sublimation, ice turning directly to gas, hollowing out the glacier from within. Glaciers need snow to survive, but the sky has turned stingy. Regional weather patterns have completely broken. Less snow, more radiation. On the equator, the sun is a blade. The mountain loses more than it gains. The ledger has been in the red for decades. This isn't just about a view. It's an ecological collapse. These glaciers feed the rivers. Millions in Tanzania and Kenya rely on that meltwater for their very lives. Agriculture, drinking water, power, all at risk. When the ice vanishes, the rivers follow, leaving only dust. This isn't a postcard. It's a life support system. And we are losing a library of climate secrets. Ice cores pulled in 2002 hold 11,000 years of atmospheric history. The data is clear. This melting is unprecedented. In 11 millennia, the mountain has never bled like this. It survived warm spells before, but never this. When the ice goes, the history book burns. Unread. Forever. Fourth on the list, the Dead Sea. The lowest point on our planet's crust, 430 meters below sea level. 10 times saltier than the ocean. A landscape unlike any other. Everyone knows the photos. People floating, reading the paper. But this legendary place is vanishing. It is disappearing faster than any lake on Earth. Over 35 meters lost in 50 years. A meter every year. The shoreline has fled, leaving behind white salt deserts where waves once crashed. Resorts from the 80s are now a kilometer inland. By 2060, only a salty puddle may remain. The cause is human. The Jordan River, its only lifeblood, has been diverted and siphoned dry. In the 1950s, it gave over 1 billion cubic meters. Today, less than 100 million. The source is gone. Over 90% of the Jordan River is snatched for irrigation and industry long before it ever reaches the coast. Meanwhile, industrial giants in Israel and Jordan obsessively extract minerals, focusing primarily on potash and bromine. They drain the Dead Sea itself to fill massive evaporation pools. It is a double execution. The sea loses its source and its very soul. As the shoreline retreats, a ghostly side effect emerges. Salty groundwater recedes, leaving a ticking time bomb beneath the surface. Vast underground voids remain where salt deposits once sat. These hollows collapse without warning, creating jagged sinkholes 65 feet deep. Over 6,000 craters now scar the landscape. They swallow highways, parking lots, and entire palm groves in an instant. Every step toward the water is a gamble. The ground is literally dissolving. For decades, the Red Dead Canal was the ultimate hope. This pipeline would have pumped Red Sea water across the desert to desalination plants, providing fresh water for millions. The leftover brine would then refill the Dead Sea. It sounded perfect, but the price tag was staggering: $10 billion. Success required a miracle of peace between nations whose histories are written in blood and distrust. By 2021, the dream died. Politics and empty pockets froze the project. Yet ecologists breathed a sigh of relief. They warned that mixing these two distinct waters could trigger a chemical nightmare. Their biological makeup is worlds apart. This cure might have poisoned the very ecosystem it aimed to save. Sometimes, the rescue is deadlier than the disease. Number 5. The Eiffel Tower. You think you know it. The Iron Heart of Paris. The world's most famous icon. We see a monument of unshakable strength. But the engineers tasked with its survival see a skeleton in terminal decay. The Iron Lady is rusting from within, faster than any brush can cover. Born in 1889, she was never meant to last. Gustave Eiffel gave her 20 years. Radio saved her. An antenna on the peak turned a temporary exhibit into a strategic asset. She survived the wrecking ball only to face a silent, relentless assassin. Oxidation. 7,000 tons of puddled iron held by 2.5 million rivets. Unlike modern steel, this metal thirsts for oxygen. Its only shield is a thin layer of paint. Every 7 years, the entire structure undergoes a grueling transformation. 25 painters manually apply 60 tons of pigment to every single inch. By the end, the start is already rotting. The tower is a paradox. It is never truly finished. It is always simultaneously being reborn and being consumed. In 2022, a leaked confidential report shattered the illusion. The rot wasn't just on the surface, it was structural. Corrosion has eaten through the core. Load-bearing joints are failing. The report used words that keep engineers awake at night. The tower is in critical condition. Cosmetic touch-ups are no longer enough. It needs a total surgical overhaul. 15% of the iron is compromised. Painting over it is like bandaging a broken limb. But there's a darker twist. With the 2024 Olympics looming, officials chose vanity over safety. They opted for a quick facelift. They hid the decay beneath fresh coats for the cameras. But paint doesn't stop chemistry. It only blinds the tourists. Beneath the shine, the rust thrives. Climate change is the new enemy. Paris is becoming a humid, sweltering cauldron. Temperature swings stretch and crack the iron skin. Moisture seeps into the wounds. Even the air itself has turned hostile. Pollution levels remain high enough to brew an acidic cocktail that dissolves the tower bit by bit. A 19th century masterpiece is struggling to survive the 21st. It wasn't built for this world. It won't fall tomorrow. 6 million people still climb its stairs every year. But the clock is ticking loudly. Without a massive restoration costing hundreds of millions, the degradation will become irreversible. In 30 years, we might not be looking at the original tower at all, but a replica built of replaced parts. Like the ship of Theseus, if you replace every beam, is it still the same icon? The eternal symbol of Paris is mortal. Its killer isn't a disaster or a war. It's the slow, quiet, inevitable march of rust. 5 landmarks, 5 countdowns. Venice is drowning, and $6 billion only buys a few more decades of breath. The Great Barrier Reef is bleaching into a graveyard. By mid-century, it may be a ghost of an ecosystem. The Dead Sea drops 3 feet every year, swallowed by craters. And the Eiffel Tower? It is crumbling under its own fame. We can save them all, at least in theory. Venice needs a global cooling. The reef needs the oceans to chill by at least 1 degree. Kilimanjaro needs snow that no longer falls. The Dead Sea needs the water we stole. The tower needs a fortune. We possess the technology to fix everything. Yet we continue to fuel the very fires that consume them. We watch the tragedy unfold in high definition. We know the how and the why. But will we stop the clock? The cure exists. Yet we watch the collapse. Survival is affordable, but the comfort of a slow death feels more like home. Witness Venice dry, vibrant coral forests and snowy peaks at the equator while you still can. The shore is vanishing beneath us. Touch the iron of 1889 before it dissolves. Time is screaming. 5 monuments we swore were immortal are currently failing. Brittle, like acid-burned reefs, like glaciers under a desert sun, like rusted steel hiding under paint. Permanence was always a lie. Everything built by hand or nature relies on a fragile balance. Now the scales are tipping. The global map is being rewritten quietly, irreversibly, alone.